Okay, everybody, hi. We are dealing now with the beginning of Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 76. We have reached 200, page 200 in the Scorpio Chapter. And we have just been speaking about humanity, the fourth kingdom of nature, and the fourth creative hierarchy, and its relationship to the world of form. Humanity is the divine messenger to the world of form. We are reading. It is essentially Mercury, bringing light and life to other divine manifestations, and of this all divine world saviors are the eternal symbol. And so we see the purpose of humanity and its saving force in relation to this planet. As I may have mentioned, the rays temporarily most associated with humanity are the fourth and the fifth, but eventually it will be the second and the fourth, and together they will be a saving, bridging, harmonizing, uniting force, working with the power of Buddhi, where the fourth creative hierarchy is actually focused. The says here, the coming process of planetary service through the third divine center, and that is what we are, the third divine center or throat center of our planet, is only truly effective when Aquarius rules and when our sun is passing through that sign of the zodiac. We realize that Aquarius is the sign of great service, of universal service, and it is with us for the next 2,000 years approximately, 2,160 plus another 100. That's in the smaller cycle, smaller precessional cycle, and in the larger Platonic year cycle, Aquarius is with us for some 25,000 years and maybe more, depending upon when it actually begins. DK tells us we cannot calculate the beginning of the age of Aquarius in the larger sense, that our particular science doesn't allow us to do that, but he certainly gives the hint that it is to start relatively soon, and that the great age of Pisces either has ended or is ending, the 25,000 year age of Pisces. Hence the immense importance of the next 2,000 years, the lesser precessional age, which will see humanity assuming its proper role as a receiver and distributor of divine energy, receiving from above and distributing to the lower kingdoms. Therefore, only when a man is a world server, which is the way of looking at the true Aquarian, the world server, and becoming group conscious, which is another way of understanding the particular gifts of the Aquarian energy, only when the man is a world server and becoming group conscious can this desired objective of manifestation begin to demonstrate. And we can assume that humanity itself is on the way to becoming the disciple, more and more the world server, imitating that body of servers within its nature, even at this time, the new group of world servers, and increasingly in so many ways, humanity is becoming group conscious. So only when man, a man, or even a group of men, is a world server and becoming group conscious can this desired objective of manifestation begin to demonstrate. And the sign Aquarius, through all of its trials and tests, is very useful in helping to create the hierarchical consciousness in those who are close enough to that level of evolution where it becomes possible. It is beginning to happen today, we are told here, for the first time in planetary history. It is one of the first fruits of initiation, that is, service and group consciousness, and only in the next root race, i.e. the 6th root race, the next root race to our present Aryan race, will we begin really to understand the significance of the process and the true nature of the energies to be released through the medium of humanity upon our planet. Well, he can certainly speak of this in this chapter because it is Scorpio that rules humanity and its hierarchical ruler, Mercury, which is the planet particularly associated with humanity. I think if we move here to the table of creative hierarchies, we will see that clearly. Okay. Notice Scorpio in the center, and here it is the human creative hierarchy we are discussing. Scorpio is the ruler of this group of monads, and its planet is Mercury. It works through the power of mantra. It is the word made flesh. And in one respect, it is deeply connected with the solar angels and with their particular Buddhic focus. Man is in many ways, when upon the higher mental plane, a kind of solar angel himself, although he is not as a monad, the returning nirvani from a previous Mahamanvantara, he is becoming qualified as a solar angel. Okay. Now let's see. We're having a little bit of delay here. So, it is for this reason that Jupiter and Uranus, expressions of the 2nd and 7th rays, are the exoteric and esoteric rulers of Aquarius. Well, through both Jupiter and Uranus, a deep expression of service can flow. Jupiter is involved in inducing group consciousness, and Uranus always finds the better, more archetypal way of performing. So these two rays, which are, I think, we can, in a way, we can connect them with the human monads, who are focused on the 2nd plane from one perspective, and on the 7th plane, if we count the liberated creative hierarchies and their focus on the cosmic astral planes, if we count down 7, we also find the focus of the monads. So there is a close connection between Scorpio and Aquarius, and in the 7th ray age, it is through this lower or Aquarian hierarchy, this one here, that humanity will be working, transforming the etheric body of the planet, and thereby transforming that which manifests upon the dense physical plane. Okay. All right. Now let's see if we can go a little bit lower than this. Okay, there does seem to be a little bit of a delay here on this computer. I'm sorry for that. But we will find a way, hopefully, to deal with that. Okay. I think it has something to do with too much going on. Too much, perhaps, going on. And we will see whether we can eliminate some of the things that are going on. Okay. All right, we move on. You have, therefore, the following line of force to study. We have Alcyone, the central star in the Pleiades. The Pleiades being the mothers of the 7 aspects of form life, the 7 rays from the intelligence form perspective, and the wives of the 7 rishis of the Great Bear. Therefore, each one of the 7 Pleiades connected with one of the 7 major stars in the Great Bear. The Pleiades are connected with the mother aspect, which nurtures the infant Christ, hence the connection of the Pleiades with the sign Virgo, which is the sign of the mother, and also with Cancer. Interestingly enough, there is a triangle. How does it go? It goes Pleiades, Pleiades, Cancer, Venus. Another one of the mother signs connected with this great source of the 3rd aspect. What role the 3rd aspect plays exactly in the Pleiades has yet to be determined. Is it the very deepest or monadic aspect, or is it more the personal aspect, the outer aspect of this great deity who informs these 7? That has yet to be determined. Okay, we have Alcyone, mother of the Pleiades. We have Aquarius, to which Alcyone is related, as we have discussed, the star of the individual. And interestingly enough, in the Aquarian age, I think we will find, since it is really the age of Aquarius Leo, many personalities emerging. So it will be a time when personality integration is much accentuated, and many people will be pulling their forces together to make a distinctive impact as integrated personalities. So we have Alcyone, we have Aquarius. We remember that it is Sirius that is related to Scorpio, yes, and Alcyone related to Aquarius. The most distant pointer of the Great Bear related to Aries, and the closer pointer of the Great Bear, the closer to the Polaris star, related to Leo, and Polaris itself related in a certain way to Leo. In one way, we can say that the entire Great Bear is closely related to Aries, and the entire Little Bear is very related to Leo, and that is the father and the son relationship, the 1st and 2nd aspect relationship, and perhaps in a way the great dragon that weaves his way between them is not only a 7th-ray constellation, but represents, in a certain sense, the great 3rd aspect. So Aquarius, the world servant, the transmitter of energy, which evokes magnetic response. Then we have Jupiter and Uranus, which are rulers of Aquarius, and these 2 together are planets of beneficent consummation. I think we can see how DK arrives at that rubric. Jupiter is the great planet of beneficence, and Uranus brings all things to a conclusion, an archetypal conclusion. Uranus is always hastening the Saturnian forms which have been created towards fulfillment as an archetypal form, and many modifications of structure are necessary along the way. We can say that mastership is a kind of beneficent consummation, and these are the 2 planets which together are particularly expressive at the time of the 5th initiation, as we learn on page 71 of this book, just to help us remember that. We have at the 5th initiation, Uranus and Jupiter appear and produce a beneficent organization. On the other page we've just been studying, it's called a beneficent consummation of the totality of energies found in the initiate's equipment. When this reorganization, that's Uranian, is complete, the initiate can then escape from off the wheel and then can truly live. And I suppose, well, he still is crucified upon the cardinal cross, but he has no longer a deep affiliation with the way the fixed cross manifests in the life of humanity. Remember that the fixed cross manifests in a different way in the life of the solar logos, because in this particular solar system, the solar logos is crucified upon the fixed cross, whereas in the next he'll be crucified upon the cardinal cross. Okay, so Jupiter and Uranus, planets of beneficent consummation or planets of beneficent organization. I suppose we can call the final organization which ends any particular process in an archetypal manner, I suppose we can call that a consummation. The second ray of love and the seventh ray, which fuses spirit and matter to the ultimate glory of the solar logos, are in fullest eventual cooperation. So we seem to have here Alcyone, Aquarius, and Jupiter and Uranus. And as we discussed, we do not know whether we are speaking of working through the constellation of Aquarius, or whether we are dealing particularly with the sign Aquarius. All right. And next we have, since this is the star of the individual and also in a way the star of humanity, Alcyone is, and connected with the third aspect, and Aquarius connected with the third aspect from one particular point of view as well. Moving in the clockwise manner, we have Aries, Pisces, and in the third position, Aquarius. We have humanity, the focal point for all these energies, and the divine distributor of them to individual man, and later to the lower three kingdoms of nature. So what is our process here? We have Alcyone, we have Aquarius, we have Jupiter and Uranus, and finally humanity. So we have seen a number of these lines of distribution. We had one which began with the Great Bear. Let's see, how have we have the Sirius line. Maybe I can find this as I go up, possibly, just to review. Yeah, here's one. Here's one for the hierarchy. It's Sirius, working through the fixed cross, then working through Scorpio, and finally working through the hierarchy. That's an important one. So maybe we should mention that. And also then Mars and Saturn are listed after the hierarchy. But the idea is similar, okay? So we have this is the line for humanity, and then we have also the line for hierarchy, Sirius, fixed cross, Scorpio, hierarchy, and Mars and Saturn. Perhaps we should reverse those last two. And then we have still earlier, yeah, here it is. We have the pointer furthest from the pole star. Let's call it the second pointer. Aries, Vulcan and Pluto, and Shambhala. Okay, so we'll call this, just to list all of these lines in a way that can be appreciated. We have second pointer, Aries, second pointer, Aries, and let's see, Shambhala. Oh goodness, I've forgotten the other one that was there. Sorry for that. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Aries, Vulcan, and Pluto. Vulcan and Pluto and then Shambhala. Right, it seems that the planetary center should be the last one that is mentioned here. Aries, Vulcan, and Pluto. So here, we could also say that we're dealing in a way with the cardinal cross. We could put that in this manner, cardinal cross. And here we are definitely also dealing with the fixed cross for humanity. In a way, I'd like to end this in a different manner. I'd like to say that hierarchy is the last point, and Mars and Saturn are the mediating planets. All right, so we see a number of lines of transmission that began with some of the stars which we are studying. We do not yet have a particular line of transmission from Polaris, though we can see that it is definitely connected with Leo in an important sense. Okay, so, and Leo would be the fourth constellation mentioned. We mentioned these four constellations having to do with the quaternary of the solar logos, and we called them Aries, that's the cardinal constellation. Then three fixed constellations, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And we see that the three centers in which these streams of energy from these stars terminate in Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, respectively. Alcyone terminates in humanity, Sirius terminates in hierarchy, and it appears that the second pointer, which is connected with Aries, terminates in Shambhala. Thus you see that from a generalization, the exterior constellations, exterior to the zodiac and the solar system itself, we are becoming more specific, showing how certain stars in these constellations are definitely related by direct lines of energy to our planet and to the three major centers on our planet. I think I'd like to put that in as soon as I get my bracket there. Okay, to our planet, i.e. to the three major centers on our planet, and these are Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity. To the three major centers on our planet. These lines of force usually reach us via one of the zodiacal signs, and in rare cases, directly to our planet. So we're talking about various mediating agencies. And here he does specify that we are dealing more with signs than with constellations. Remember, signs being concentrated influences, concentrations of the energy which emanates from the constellation, zodiacal constellation itself. So we seem to be dealing directly with the signs and not the constellations. So in rare cases, these energies come directly to the planet. So we've seen how the mediatorship takes place. Alcyone is pouring through the sign Aquarius. Sirius is pouring through the sign Scorpio, but through other signs as well, definitely. And the second pointer is pouring through the sign Aries. Now, in this latter case of the energy coming directly to a planet, this latter case is, however, exceedingly rare. I guess we normally need the buffering influence of a sign. Remember that these these signs, the 12 signs, have a kind of heart center influence, and so they can buffer the energies of the aspects of the will. Even the constellations, the 12 zodiacal constellations, have a heart center influence. the heart within the head of the one about whom naught may be said. So we have a series of heart centers, our own 12-petaled heart center. We have our 12-petaled heart center within the head. We have our 12-petaled egoic lotus, and we have the zodiac as kind of the prototype. The zodiac of signs is kind of the prototype of all of those 12s. We do not know, perhaps we can infer that there is something about the monad itself, which is 12-fold, inasmuch as it is much associated with this 12th sign of the zodiac, Pisces. But how many petals may be found in the monadic structure, if there is a kind of lotus on those high levels? We know there is a temple on those high levels, the temple of Ezekiel, just as we have the temple of Solomon on the higher mental plane. So if there is a temple and lotus on the higher mental plane, since there is a temple on the monadic plane, will there also be some sort of 12-fold configuration? That is a question. The monad, of course, is a first-ray structure within our nature, and yet, at least in this solar system, its structure is found upon the second plane, correlating it to the second ray, the second systemic plane. It is ruled by Jupiter, that plane, a second ray planet largely, and it is also associated with the sign Virgo, which is the major second ray distributor to our solar system at this time. So there are many second ray factors which seem to relate to the monad's expression, even though it embodies the first ray nature in man. But since this is the second solar system, all that is expressing along the first ray will have to be considered a sub-ray of the second ray. So this is it's very rare that these streams of energy, or lines of force as he calls them, reach us directly and not mediated by one of the signs of the zodiac. See, it's so tricky. We don't know when he's talking about constellations and when he's talking about signs, but let's say that often when the source of energy is something less than a constellation through which it must flow, then he may be talking about a sign. We cannot generalize absolutely here, nor need we necessarily determine exactly when he's talking about signs and constellations, because the energy is pretty much the same. The signs are adapting the constellational energy to the target solar system or sun or planet in such a way that those great energies can be used. So constellational, zodiacal constellational energy does need to be transformed, somewhat attenuated or downgraded or brought into a usable form. And this is the function of the signs, these concentrated influences. Otherwise, I think there could be no direct transmission of those energies in a useful way to their target planet or sun. Okay, so this latter case of the lines of force coming directly to the planet is exceedingly rare. And he doesn't, is he going to tell us any cases in which this is so? We have also brought into relation to our solar system another constellation. Okay, an important one. He doesn't say too much about it, but it is related to Leo, and it's certainly related to Polaris, because the tail of the bear, of the little bear, is Polaris. It's called the little bear, which is a reflection of, or a corollary to, the major energies of its greater prototype, Ursa Major, the Great Bear. We do have the Father and the Son set up. We have the first aspect of divinity and the second aspect of divinity, and since in our zodiacal signs the first aspect of divinity is particularly connected with Aries and the second with Leo, I think we can see the appropriateness of linking Aries to the Great Bear and Leo to the Little Bear. These facts contain a great mystery connected, well, it's a great mystery. All right, but it has suggested itself to our consciousness. These facts contain a great mystery connected with the interrelation of Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and the Pleiades. They constitute one of the most important, one of the greatest and most important of the triplicities to be found in the heavens as far as we have astronomically ascertained the nature of our immediate universe. The word universe, again, is a relative term. It doesn't mean necessarily the grand entirety of all cosmos. It can mean a certain section of space. It even can mean a solar system itself. So notice there is an analogy here, because DK so often talks about the triplicity of Ursa Major, Sirius, and the Pleiades. Well, now he substitutes a constellation that I would say must be far greater than the dwarf star Sirius. He substitutes the entirety of Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, which contains the supergiant star Polaris. So we have to think that if Sirius represents the Sun aspect, the Christ aspect, that Ursa Minor is also the Sun to a greater degree, S-O-N, to a greater degree, and is a kind of higher octave of the second aspect. The second aspect is definitely connected with Ursa Minor. At the present time, Polaris, which is part of this second aspect demonstration, is a star of redemption. It is our pole star, and it allows us to reface and reacquire that which has been lost, which is so much suggesting the second ray, the idea of being able to recover that which has been, excuse me, that which has been taken away. So he says this is a perfectly unimportant piece of information as far as you are concerned, and is only of significance to initiates of the fourth degree. So you begin to wonder whether there is some transcending of one of the influences of Sirius at this degree, and if the the Little Bear influence is becoming more prominent at this degree. Obviously, this is a hint, but a very high hint, and one that is likely to escape us. It serves, nevertheless, to add its evidence to the essential integrity and interlocking dependencies of the universe. We might wonder about the connection of the Ajna center and the heart center in this particular comparison between the Little Bear and Sirius. Obviously, if a constellation or a star, well, we can also call Sirius perhaps a constellation, are interchangeable in a triangle, namely Great Bear, Sirius, Pleiades, Great Bear, Little Bear, Pleiades, they must have something, some very strong connection to each other. And when you really look at this, Sirius does express a type of sevenfold energy. We learned that earlier, just in one of the most recent of these discussions. Sirius is connected with the 7 ashrams and with the 7 rays, but so is the little bear, probably from a higher point of view. And it does seem that the role of the sun, S-O-N, in relation to the father, who is the great bear, is better played by Ursa Minor than by Sirius itself. It might be that there is a direct line of connection between the little bear and Sirius after the father has related to the son, i.e. the little bear. If I was looking for 21 or 3 times 7 ways of expressing the 7 rays, I would say that the will aspect emanates from the great bear, that the intelligence or matter aspect of the rays emanates from the Pleiades, especially the 7 with which we seem to have most to do, and that the sun aspect, or the love or wisdom aspect, emanates from the little bear, and probably in some way finds itself related to Sirius, and the tendency of Sirius to work also with the septonates, as we have discovered by the manner in which Sirius influences the 7 ashrams. Well, those are perhaps a few thoughts that might help us work on this particular hint. But I have the feeling that we're just really scratching the surface here. Okay, in order the better to understand the nature of discipleship, remember Scorpio being a major sign of discipleship, along with Sagittarius and Virgo to an extent. Excuse me. In order the better to understand the nature of discipleship and the processes of stabilization through mental polarization, I would say, especially in Scorpio, where Mercury is so strong, and right direction, which is so powerful in Sagittarius, we must precede the Capricornian experience of initiation with a careful study of the spiritual implications of the sign Scorpio and of its function in providing points of crises, yes, with its strong first ray, fourth ray energy relation, and moments of reorientation. So Scorpio is going to provide for us points of crises and moments of reorientation. As this will be of the utmost value to the earnest student, moments of reorientation, we remember that the reorienting planet, which allows one to face the archetype, which should be manifesting, and probably isn't yet, is Uranus. So we have a moment of reversal with Uranus esoterically ruling Libra, but some of this reversing process is also occurring in Scorpio with Uranus as the exalted planet. So the reversals of the wheel have much to do with those 2 signs which have Uranus powerfully represented, namely Libra and Scorpio. So we are interested in stabilization and right direction, which precedes the Capricornian experience of initiation. We have to see what kinds of points of crisis we pass through under this scorpionic energy, remembering that the 4th ray, of which it is the major distributor, is very much an influence which induces crises. And the idea of reversal comes with moments of orientation. All right, DK goes on. Even though I am endeavoring to lay the foundation for the new astrology, just think of the kind of astrology that we have been using and about which many of us have been quite satisfied and even complacent. And then along comes DK in the early 1930s and introduces an entirely new perspective on astrology, just think of the way in which this perspective was rejected by the vast majority, naturally, because it would tend to archetypalize the study of astrology and make it much truer to the inner energies, but at the same time it would upset the present structure in which so many astrologers were invested. It would disrupt, that's Uranian, it would disrupt the thought forms about astrology. Dane Rudyard tried, I think, in his book, The Astrology of Personality, to somehow work in DK's information, but at long last, I think even he decided on his own paradigm and left behind the type of astrology here being presented. When I talked to Dane Rudyard and I asked him about the Alice Bailey astrology, he said, well, it's not astrology as I know it. So it's very hard to assimilate this new astrology if one is greatly invested in one's own formulations or in the prevailing formulations. And if you read the vast majority of books, you'll see that they do not really reflect the esoteric astrology here being presented. So even though I am endeavoring to lay the foundation for the new astrology and to provide some measure of technical information from the point of view of the hierarchy, okay, and it's not so technical, it's not really a mathematical presentation. I think we see this, there's a lot of complexity in astrology, which is somewhat mathematically based, and DK is avoiding that. He's working much more for us in the world of meaning. My underlying motive, he says, is ever the same: to indicate the way of living process and to stimulate that divine curiosity and that sense of outgoing spiritual adventure and eager aspiration for progress, which is latent in all disciples and which, when stimulated, will enable them to proceed more serenely and sanely upon the path of return. Well, this is his motive. This is his objective. He wants to indicate the way of a process we can follow which leads to greater livingness in his living process. He wants to stimulate our Mercury in a way, the divine curiosity which is latent in all of us. This sort of a, what can I say, kind of a Geminian Sagittarian motive here. Curiosity and spiritual adventure, curiosity Gemini, spiritual adventure Sagittarius. Aspiration he wants to stimulate, an eagerness for progress. And when all of this is stimulated, we will have the sense of real progress, and we will, without so much self-recrimination, self-criticism, even self-torture, we will be able to proceed more serenely and in a more illumined manner along the path of return. Notice he even uses the word sanely, meaning that much of what he is able to convey here in esoteric astrology will be able to help the aspirant and the disciple have a much more healthy approach to their spiritual progress, and they will be far more balanced and less fragmented. What does it mean to be sane or insane? It's somewhat of a relative notion, I suppose, but he talks about the sanctified normality, the sanctified normality of the initiate, and I think he wants to see in all of us, when we are armed with this type of valuable information about the subtle energies which influence us, he wants to see in us that sanctified normality which will allow us to proceed along the path with far less difficulty and trouble and upset and so many unnecessary crises. Necessary crises there are, but there are many that are somewhat unnecessarily induced and of a lesser kind and are simply disturbing, and maybe having a knowledge of these energies when we confront the vicissitudes of life will enable us to face them with greater understanding, less emotional reactivity, and so forth. Otherwise, the practical value of that which I seek to impart is of no real importance at all. Well, he's certainly giving us a large thought form of these energies and their tendencies and the way they promote evolution. I think he's saying, though, that much of what he is imparting is for application in a future time. But if he can induce the aspiration and curiosity and sense of adventure within us so that we really drive forward with our full rational and even intuitive faculties operating and can tread the path with greater surety, he will have accomplished something. I shall be understood, and the new astrology will come into being according to the esoteric capacity of those who read and ponder on my words. And I suppose here we are somewhat dealing with what DK has called the esoteric sense. So we have the five senses, then the sixth, which is the uniting or common sense, which has to do with rationality and thought power. And then we have the esoteric sense, which is the intuitive sense, that which allows us to cognize and to appreciate information directly and in wholes. So we get truth in an unmediated manner. So the esoteric capacity is something linked to intuition, and it's not just a question of using the concrete rational mind. And I suppose it can be questioned how much esoteric capacity we all really do have. I am exceedingly anxious. Interesting words for a master, no? I'm exceedingly anxious that in these days wherein the influence of Scorpio and of the planet Mars is so strongly felt in world affairs, that true insight may be cultivated. Now we have to realize he did write this before World War II. You know, it was a long time ago. But DK is giving us information and truths as the hierarchy understands these truths. And so they don't just fade away, come and go. This is not just a novelty. This is something that stands over centuries, millennia, ages, and so forth. Excuse me. So this was a time when Mars and the warlike energies of Scorpio were building up tremendously. The forces of Pluto had been released, and humanity was in the balances with respect to whether the world war would be continued, and indeed it was. So perhaps something about this astrological information would be able to give greater insight as to what was happening and optimism, so that perhaps world goodwill could have triumphed over those forces which eventually led to war. He wanted to cultivate insight, optimism, and understanding developed, and the true nature of the tests to which the world disciple, humanity, is today being subjected may be estimated at their true value, and thus light be shed upon the way of man. So obviously humanity was going through a tremendous testing period at that time. It's certainly not finished with its testing period. After all, it's only when Christ reappears and is recognized that there will be the indication that man has taken the first initiation, or at least a certain significant portion of humanity has taken the first initiation, which is discussed as humanity itself taking the first initiation. And we are still in the scorpionic testing period before that first initiation can be taken. So let's reread this for continuity. I'm exceedingly anxious that in these days wherein the influence of Scorpio and of the planet Mars is so strongly felt in world affairs, that true insight may be cultivated, optimism and understanding developed. We certainly need that, even though we are often dismayed by the kinds of events that are emerging on the world stage. But in the long run, optimism is a truer attitude than one of pessimism. We need to see why these things are happening. So true insight may be cultivated, optimism and understanding developed, and the nature of the tests to which the world disciple, humanity is today being subjected, may be estimated at their true value. What actually are we passing through? Probably so few human beings realize what we are actually preparing for, what we are actually passing through, and to what it may lead, namely the birth of the Christ in the heart of a large portion of humanity, and thus an elevation of humanity which so few suspect at this time. And so that having these things in mind, having these insights in mind, and with an optimistic and understanding attitude, and estimating the nature of the tests, we may emerge into the fuller opportunities of the new age. So only through understanding will solution come and rectification of error be achieved. And so I think we can see, here the function of the spiritual propaganda effort upon the second ray, the educative movement in which so many of us are involved, and how it is to induce understanding so that we may have the real solutions. Well, 80 years have passed since this was written, approximately 80 years, and we can ask to what extent there is understanding. I think there is a much greater understanding, and there are many spiritually inclined individuals who really do see what the stakes are and have that kind of have that kind of optimism which will lead within the next 100 years into the beginning of the new age. The battle is still raging. There are many retrogressive forces, especially the retrogressive forces of the sixth ray, on which there are so many souls focused. They are reactionary forces. They seem to want to take humanity backwards, and it will be up to the more heart-centered, rational, and intuitive groups within humanity to counterbalance that retrogressive effort and make sure that we do not slide back and become, as DK warned, reinitiated into the earth. Okay, the tests of Scorpio are necessarily three in nature, as they concern intimately the readiness of the threefold personality. Well, whether it's three or threefold divisions of 3 and 9, it's all the same. So we have a threefold test. To reorient itself, that is the personality, to the life of the soul, and later to evidence readiness for initiation. So we read that reorientation is part of the process of Scorpio. That was just here, wasn't it? Let's see where we were. Yes. Crises, producing an understanding for the need of reorientation. So reorient the personality and prepare it for initiation, and then to demonstrate sensitivity to the plan and thus become the one-pointed disciple in Sagittarius. I would say there are three signs in which the plan is increasingly appreciated, and they would be Scorpio, Sagittarius, and finally Capricorn, where the plan in some detail, I think, can truly be understood. To reorient itself, that is, the personality reorients itself to the life of the soul. It's kind of a reversal based upon the struggles and the pain of crisis, and a better way is seen, and perhaps a higher power is sensed, a saving power. to evidence readiness for initiation by testing oneself out in many strenuous ways, or having life circumstances test one, and to demonstrate sensitivity to the plan, which is the direction of the thought of God for our planet, thus becoming the one-pointed disciple in Sagittarius. So in Scorpio, we achieve struggle, strength, and eventually Sagittarian attitudes. We have test, trial, and triumph, which I think he will mention in this chapter. Test, trial, and triumph, and a struggle, and then strength developed, and Sagittarian attitudes, which are no longer succumbing to struggle because they are one-pointed, having resolved the struggle and used the energy involved in struggle and fight to move forward according to the vision which has been revealed as a result of the reorientation. The three major tests are again divided into three stages. So let's just underline these things: reorient, and readiness, and then sensitivity. These are the three tests. And so before we start subdividing them, we recognize that we turn around and face another way. Sometimes this is called repentance. You know, when we struggle and there's a great fight within us, and we turn around and face a higher and better way, we do not succumb to temptation, but we repent, we turn around and face a better way and perform that which the better way indicates. And as we perform it, we are undergoing one test successfully after another, proving that we are strong enough and ready to take initiation. And then in terms of our life activity, what shall we do with our energy? We no longer follow our own promptings, but the promptings of the directed thought of God, which is the divine plan. So following the directed thought of God, which is the divine plan. Okay. All right, these three major tests are again divided into three stages, and upon the path of discipleship, the man may find himself passing into this sign for testing and experience 9 times. Whoa. Earlier we learned that you can have the same rising sign for one life or for a period of 7 lives, perhaps any number of incarnations between the 1 and the 7. And here we find the man passing into this sign. Now it doesn't tell us whether this is this, whoops, I don't want that. So we say, is this the sun sign or the rising sign, or either or both? So in any case, he has the opportunity for some 9 incarnations, and classically there are 9 heads of the Hydra. So we can understand the 9 incarnations in relation to 3 physical tests, 3 emotional tests, and 3 mental tests. And we might say that there are 3 phases here. The path of discipleship, let us say, extends all the way to the 3rd initiation. So the 3rd initiation. So we might say before the 1st initiation, there may be 3 physical tests. Before the 2nd, 3 emotional tests. Before the 3rd initiation, 3 mental tests. So the path of discipleship is long. And between the 1st and 3rd initiation, there may be quite a number of incarnations. And so, well, how many? Some people say 30. Some people say less. I don't think we can specify at this point, as so much depends upon how the individual takes advantage of the opportunities offered. But let's just say Scorpio must be pretty prominent as a sign in which or under which to be born, if you can have it prominent 9 times in the period between what I call the first initiation and the third. Really, the path of discipleship, I feel, and not just probationary discipleship, begins with the first initiation, although in a way you can remain what's called a probationer all the way up to the period of accepted discipleship, which can occur somewhere between the first and second initiation, or perhaps beyond. All right, the fact of the 3 tests, each existing in their 3 stages, may convey a hint to the esoteric astrologers as to the purpose of the 3 decanates into which each sign is divided. And here I think he's going to hint that the first 10 degrees can relate to the physical nature, and the second 10 degrees to the emotional, and the third 10 degrees to the mental. After all, that's where those tests will occur. The different vehicles of the human being have to be tested out. So we have 3 decanates, and perhaps in a way 3 tests per decanate. Now, we can, if we are born with a prominent Scorpio, either as the sun sign or rising sign, or perhaps maybe even the moon sign, or the stellium in Scorpio, which contains perhaps the ruling planet, we can see how these are focused, which decanate they find themselves in. And according to the level of the path in which we find ourselves, we may be able to discover something about the tests. Now, would it mean that only if you have a prominent rising sign or sun sign in the third decanate of Scorpio are you passing the tests for the third initiation? I don't think we can say that for sure. Or only if you have sun or rising sign or something prominent in Scorpio's second decanate are you passing the tests for the second initiation? And so for the first, I'm not sure we can really say that. We can theorize about that, and we can work up a well-structured theory, but I think we have to study the lives of people who we can determine we're passing through particular preparations for a particular initiation, and see where their Scorpio influences were placed. I mean, I could, go off on a and tempted to go off on a little search here using the Solar Fire program, and thereby, locate famous people. I mean, you can do that, like, yeah, I'll show you how it could be done. You see, we would go into Solar Fire here, and I have a file of people that I call famous people. Here it is, as a matter of fact. And I'd go into the find area, and I'd do a chart search. Well, is this going to come? Yeah. I would do a chart search, and hopefully it will come up for me. It seems to be pretty slow at the moment. Let's see. Again, open the file, and all. And we say find, and we do a chart search, yes. And suppose I wanted to say, what do I want? I want planet. So find, let's say, traditional ruler, esoteric ruler, find the sun, let's say. Sun okay, it's the sun in midpoint, in house, in aspect, in phase, in sign. Sun in Scorpio. Okay, so I'll replace, and the sun in Scorpio, and then I run this. And, so I thought I could. Sorry for the delay here. I'm the famous and cleaner, and I'm not. The point is the sun in Scorpio. So we find the sun in Scorpio and search. And here it is. Here are all these people with the sun in Scorpio, and they are famous people. John Adams, St. Augustine. It looks like St. Augustine is in the third decanate, and John Adams is in the first decanate. Does that mean he was only working before the first initiation? You see what I mean? Sarah Bernhardt, a great actor, she was in the first decanate of Scorpio, and yet it would seem that her tests would have more to do with the second degree and the emotional nature. Benvenuto Cellini, well, perhaps fittingly in the second decanate of Scorpio, though we have to be careful about the old style and new style calendars if we go back too far. Marie Curie, she was in the second decanate of Scorpio. This is relatively modern, but it would seem to me that her tests would be more along the mental nature, which would be fitting for the third decanate of Scorpio. See what I mean? Fyodor Dostoevsky, he's, well, it's difficult to say. It looks like the third decanate. That's possible, but certainly his emotional, his Kama-monastic life was very much figuring into his novels. About Erasmus, I don't know too much. Ficino, he was very important mentally in the Renaissance, and yet he would be in the first decanate, I do believe, and so forth. Let's see. Well, we can hardly call Goebbels an initiate, although, you know, he might have been one of those who could have taken or did take the second initiation and veered off the path. Billy Graham in the second decanate of Scorpio, I think that fits well for the intensity of his sixth-ray emotional nature. But John Keats, with a great poet of the emotions, he seems to be in the first decanate. So, you see, I think we have to be very careful when we think about the tests that these different people may be passing, because their birthday, their sun, or even rising sign may locate itself in a decanate which does not seem to correlate exactly with the test that they are undergoing. Of course, look, we're not a master, we are not their master. We do not know specifically, unless we study scrupulously their biography, which tests they may have been undergoing. And even if we studied their biography scrupulously, we do not have a master's insight. I wonder if we know, if we have strong Scorpio, what specific tests we are undergoing. And one wonders whether the tests of the first decanate, which we can call sex, money, and comfort, ever are completely overcome until all of the heads of the Hydra are overcome. In other words, we may overcome them to a degree, but perhaps even in the preparation for the third initiation, there are vestiges of uncompleted work hanging over from the first or second decanate, even as we are completing the third decanate. So I think it's dangerous to be too cut and dried with our theorization. I mean, these theories make nice mental models, but do they actually conform to reality? You know, think about Marie Curie. All of that work being done in the mental nature with her very strong fifth ray and seventh ray. On the other hand, who knows, there may have been tests which were particularly involved with the second decanate of Scorpio, fear, hatred, and ambition. So the first decanate, sex, money, and comfort. This is the first decanate. Second decanate, fear, hatred, and love of power or ambition. And then the third decanate, pride, separativeness, and cruelty. Maybe even though she was working in the mental field, her emotional nature was in some way being tested out. Well, anyway, DK says there is a hint here, and I think we can see what the structure of the hint would be. I think that's not so difficult to see. But I would strongly recommend biographical study in order to make sure We are not imposing a mental structure upon life in any rigid manner that ignores what life is actually demonstrating. Okay, the fact of the three tests, each existing in their three stages, may convey a hint to esoteric astrologers as to the purpose of the three decanates into which each sign is divided. A point upon which I shall hope to touch when we come to our study of the science of triangles. He doesn't perhaps know whether he actually will get to it, but he would like to touch upon that. Each test, this is test, trial, and triumph. This is Scorpio. And when you are, tested, it is demonstrated to yourself and to others of what substance you really are composed. What is your mettle? What is your worthiness? What is your merit? Will you be overcome by the opponent, or will the strength and the acumen, the wisdom within you overcome the opponent, and will you demonstrate victory? Each test, and therefore each decanate, concerns the three aspects which in this treatise on the seven rays we have called life, quality, and appearance. So life correlating with the first aspect, quality with the second or soul aspect, appearance with the form aspect, obviously. Thus, the three great tests in Scorpio are in reality 9 tests, and hence the 9-headed hydra or serpent, 9 being the number of completion. And when you have completed these 9 tests, and there still are, I would say, many subdivisions possible within the 9, when you've completed these 9 tests, you have passed the curriculum and are ready to declare as a third degree initiate, or be declared, or your life becomes declarative of the third degree. Perhaps that's a better way of putting it. Thus, the 3 great tests in Scorpio are in reality 9 tests, and hence the 9-headed hydra or serpent, the serpent of matter in this case, the serpent of personality, which is ever associated with Scorpio, and hence also the nature of the stupendous victory achieved by Hercules, the sun god in this sign. Hercules is the incarnated soul. He's not yet the soul on his own plane, but he is the one who realizes himself while in the very midst of all the personality fluctuations and battles. He realizes himself as the soul. And, DK uses words like stupendous, okay? So this is the testing sign, and there is no easy overcoming of the opponent. And it is said that in many ways, the second initiation of which Scorpio is emblematic, is the most difficult initiation for human beings to take, especially if they are on rays 2, 4, 6, and perhaps also 1 and 7. He says there's a bit of an easier time taking the second initiation when you are on the 3rd ray or the 5th ray, because the emotional body becomes less of an opponent. There's less emotional charge and resistance for the 3rd and the 5th ray types. But on the other hand, they might have more difficulty taking an initiation in which illusion has to be dispelled, because the mind is often the creator of illusion, and perhaps it is not as possible for them as for some of those on the soft line rays to access the intuition which dispels illusion. So for all the different ray types, there are different kinds of tests and trials of varying difficulty depending on the ray type. So, okay, the threefold tests in the 3 aspects of the personality, and also as well the major 3 can be described differently as reorientation, readiness, and sensitivity. And you might wonder whether we can correlate reorientation with the physical tests, the readiness for initiation with the astral tests, and sensitivity to the plan with the mental tests. Perhaps we can, although they are slightly different words than we might think about when we think about the purifications that one has to undergo in each one of the vehicles. We do need a sound body with rightly consecrated energies. We need a balanced emotional nature in which the normal desires, personal desires, are subdued. We need the death of the astral vehicle in that respect, which can be symbolized by Moon in Scorpio. And we need a sensitivity to God's thought and not just to our own thoughts when we are focused in the mental realm. All right. It is interesting to note that each of the great sons of God, whose names are preeminent in the minds of men, well, certainly the Buddha and the Christ are preeminent these days, whether Hercules, I suppose Hercules has also survived with a kind of preeminence as the symbol of great physical strength. Of course, that is somewhat of a distortion or a partial view of Hercules, because he has had to exercise all of the qualities, not just the physical qualities. Hercules is so often depicted as a muscle man, the ultimate in weight training, perhaps. But he has to have this great emotional power and mental power as well to pass the tests. Anyway, the three great sons of God, whose names are preeminent in the minds of men, Hercules, the Buddha, and the Christ, one associated with the first ray, that is Hercules, the Buddha having a combination of first ray and second ray, being a first ray personality, but essentially a third ray monad, and the Christ very much on the second ray, are associated in the archives of the Great White Lodge with three special signs of the zodiac, which in a peculiar manner, and this manner is not revealed to us, constitute the zodiacal decanate. The zodiacal decanate, or a zodiacal decanate in some larger zodiac, perhaps. So they are associated in the archives of the Great White Lodge with three special signs of the zodiac, in each of which they passed from test to victory. Now, I'm sure we can intuit what these are if we have not read them, but we'll go on and let DK describe this. They achieved victory in each one, in one sign particularly, and there is a kind of a decanate, presumably then, well, let's just say that does it represent, a decanate usually represents 1/36th of the zodiacal wheel. Does this particular decanate represent 1/36th of a greater wheel in which the three signs are involved, or do the three signs together represent kind of a 1/12th, a sign in themselves? The word decanate is used, and so it seems that it is a division by, it's a unit based on the number 10. Is the greater wheel a 360-degree wheel? Well, most wheels are. DK doesn't say much about the larger system in which these three signs together represent a zodiacal decanate. So in Scorpio, that is the sign particularly associated with Hercules. In Scorpio, Hercules becomes the triumphant disciple. This is what so many of us are looking forward to, and I suppose that following the second initiate, well, I mean, you can triumph 3 times. You can triumph physically, emotionally, and mentally. If you triumph mentally, finally, you are the initiate, you're the true initiate. But I think this relates mostly to the second degree, because after this point, your next triumph makes of you the true initiate. Here you are the triumphant, let us say, probationary initiate, and you have subdued the vehicle which is most problematic for all human beings on this planet, which is still in a way emotionally polarized, and in our solar system, in which the solar logos is still emotionally polarized. It's the astral body in this astral Buddhic solar system, which is for men the greatest obstacle to overcome. The triumphant disciple. And I guess we can look at all the areas of our life as we are disciples or intending to be disciples in which we are not yet triumphant. Okay, we have to win over certain tempting obstacles which are pulling us back into matter, form, and under the sway of the third aspect of divinity. In Taurus, excuse me, in Taurus, the Buddha achieved victory over desire and arrived at illumination. Now, this is not just the illumination of the third degree. This is much beyond that. Not just the illumination of the third degree. His illumination was from the cosmic mental plane and was of the sixth degree. 500 years later, the Christ achieved the same sixth degree along another line. But, if we're dealing with the number 6, obviously the sixth initiation is related to the sixth principle or the desire principle. So this victory over desire was not just a kind of victory over personal desires, which the normal disciple has, but a victory over desire for any kind of life, I suppose, in the 5 worlds of human and superhuman evolution. I suppose at this time the Buddha became a fully conscious embodied monad on his own monadic ray, which everything in cosmic fire seems to point to as the third ray. Then in Pisces, the Christ overcame death and became the world's savior. And here again, I think we are talking about the 6th degree when he said, "Not my will, but thine be done." Here speaking of the 6th degree. In the Garden of Gethsemane. That's where this would have happened, and that anchored, we are told, a strand of truly divine will upon the earth. Oh, that's a funny way to spell illumination. Let's see, illumination. There we go. All right. So these are 3 victories, and we have to wonder, however, since Hercules is now, we are told, in Shambhala, and thus, has remained with the Lord of the world as part of the saving force, what his triumph as a disciple really was. And maybe it did mean the becoming the initiate of the third degree. We don't have, I'm wondering if in the labors of Hercules we have any indication that Hercules took the 4th degree in those Atlantean days when he was demonstrating for people these particular dramas as teaching points. We're told that the personality of Hercules was the 2nd, and his soul ray the 1st, and presumably his astral body the 6th, and presumably, since he was creating plays, his mind the 4th. We don't know whether he has kept those rays, or whether now, as one who manifests in Shambhala, he has any need of the lower rays at all. But all of that will be clarified in due time. DK was giving in the destiny of the nations the rays of these great sons of God, the Christ having the 2nd ray soul, 6th ray personality, and 1st ray mind, interestingly, and the Buddha having the 2nd ray soul, 1st ray personality, and 6th ray mind, and Hercules, if I remember it properly, the 1st ray soul, 2nd ray personality, and probably 6th ray astral body, probably fourth ray mind. One of those was not given, but that looks like the most likely, and probably, Hercules with his, well, he was a great teacher. We don't know his monadic ray, but there's very much to suggest it could be the first. That would be a double first ray. Anyway, all in due time, these points will be clarified. These three constellations, therefore, form a triangle of initiation, from discipleship to illumination to world saviorship. The disciple, we are told that the Christ was teaching the path of initiation. The Buddha was teaching the path of accepted discipleship. And, well, Hercules seems to have been teaching the path of struggles along the path of aspiration and discipleship. Although it is technically true that the Buddha was teaching arhats as well. And the students of the Christ were not so much arhats. His disciples were not that high. The Master Jesus, he who is now the Master Jesus, was the initiate Jesus, and the Christ was teaching him the way into arhatship. So, in a way, the Buddha, with his 900 arhats, as it were, was teaching in his close circle a higher, more experienced, and far older group of students, probably students from the previous chain, just as the Buddha was, and who knows, maybe the Buddha was even from the previous solar system. The Christ, we know, was not. So his teaching, in a way, was more accessible to the average individual. That is interesting. Interesting. Okay. So three constellations then form a triangle of initiation of profound importance because it provides those conditions and that energy which will test and perfect the three aspects of the personality so that they are true reflections of the three divine aspects. Now, how would we correlate this? We can correlate Taurus with the physical plane. We can correlate Pisces with the emotional plane. We can correlate Taurus with the illumination of the mind. We can correlate Scorpio with the dense physical vehicle and all the physical tests, but also with the astral tests and even with mental tests. So let's see if he enlarges upon the correlation that he has in mind here. Excuse me. They concern soul and body primarily, and therefore their expression is through the mutable cross and the fixed cross, but not yet the cardinal cross. Okay, that is pretty well understood, because the fixed cross is the cross of the soul, and all of the teaching of the Buddha and the Christ, and even of Hercules, is to teach man how to become the true soul in expression, although you have to face circumstances, the ever-changing circumstances on the mutable cross. Perhaps, although it was a high teaching, we could say that Hercules' teaching came first, and in a way was the lowest of the three. The Christ and the Buddha were becoming third-degree initiates in a fourth-ray ashram in Atlantean times, and Hercules was an Atlantean teacher. So in a way, much of this teaching may have come from those who entered the hierarchy in Atlantean times, and maybe new dispensations of teaching are needed for the Aryan adaptation, for the Aryan race, although the Christ coming out of those earlier times is still, of course, the teacher for the Aryan race as it makes its transition into the sixth root race, which will be ruled by Buddhi, which is an energy which the Christ is wielding all the time. So they will test and perfect body, emotions, mind. We know that the Buddhists are keenly focused on the powers of the mind and on overcoming the mind as an instrument of illusion. We know that in Christianity we have a profound orientation of the astral nature towards love and its infusion by the divine quality of love. And when we deal with Hercules, we are bringing the tests right down onto the dense physical plane and there making good. So Hercules is certainly involved as a man of strength, the Christ as a man of heart, love in the astral body, and the Buddha coming from the moon chain and from the previous solar system, perhaps as a man of the mind, helping his type of students achieve the enlightenment or the illumination. I think we, in that respect, we could identify the Taurus tests with the mind, the illumination of the mind, the Pisces tests with the creation of soul love and Buddhic love within the astral body, Christ love within the astral body, and Scorpio in this case would represent for Hercules the physical tests particularly. Okay, so we're not yet on the cardinal cross. It's only when we become initiate of the 5th degree that we can say we are really stepping upon the cardinal cross or offering ourselves for crucifixion upon this more cosmic cross, or even solar systemic cross. Even as an initiate of the 4th degree, we're not really on the cardinal cross, as we have discussed before. Okay, so let's see what DK says. Let's see if we're right. Well, no, we're not really right here. There's other ways of looking at it. Scorpio carries the test right down into the physical plane life. That much is correct. And then when it is faced and handled there, the life of the man is carried up into heaven, I suppose the Buddhic plane, with which Scorpio is associated, as is Mercury. And the problem which the test involved is solved by the use of the reasoning mind. Well, in this case, heaven can be the mind. We have the reasoning mind, and then we have the transcendental mind of pure reason, which does overcome illusion. So we're talking about the 3 levels on which these 3 signs can operate and prove the personality, bring the personality into the right condition, and bring the 3 aspects of the personality into that type of condition which truly reflects the 3 divine aspects. So it looks like we have here the physical plane associated with Scorpio. Now, Taurus is the 2nd sign, and I suppose can connect with the 2nd principle from below, which is the astral nature. Taurus governs desire and carries the tests into the emotional or astral plane and carries desire sensitivity up from the form side of life into the sensitive perception, which we call the intuitional plane. Okay, well, we have the Buddha with the wisdom of Buddhi, which is that which emanates from the intuitional plane. So I think I guess we can say that the Buddha did deal with the desire factor in man and tried to reorient that desire. I think with his higher students he was dealing with the illumination of the mind, but perhaps his teaching helps people overcome the desire for incarnation, the 4 noble truths, perhaps having to do with one's desire for the dense physical experience and relieving oneself eventually of that particular desire and thus ending the pain associated with it. It's interesting, though, that Pisces will carry the test into the mental processes. I guess we can look at, Pisces is not usually considered one of the mental signs, but its esoteric and hierarchical ruler, which is Pluto, is a highly cerebral planet involved with research and the penetrating mind. So we do have a connection there. Not so much through Pisces rays, which are the 2nd and the 6th. With Taurus's rays, which is the 4th at this time, we do have the conflicts of the desire and body. And really we're dealing with the soft line rays here, aren't we? Scorpio is largely bringing in the 4th ray, Taurus the 4th ray, and Pisces the 2nd and 6th, all of them soft line rays. But all of them have a connection with the 1st ray as well, and with that urge towards victory, which the 4th ray gives, yes, but the 1st ray as well. Pisces carries the test into the region of the mental processes, which is a reflection of the will aspect of divinity. So now we understand the method that DK is using. It's kind of a superimposition. He's taking Atma and imposing it upon the mind. It's a kind of a correspondence. He's taking Buddhi, imposing it upon the astral body, and the Buddha is certainly connected with Buddhi or wisdom, and he's taking the higher mind and imposing it upon the physical nature. And this would correlate with Scorpio. We are told of how powerful Mercury is when dealing with Scorpio. Powerful in 2 senses, and I suppose Mercury will have to be connected with Hercules and with Scorpio. So Pisces carries the test into the region of the mental processes, which is the reflection of the will aspect, the atmic aspect of divinity. The problem of the initiate in this sign is voiced by the words, by Christ in the words, "Father, not my will, but thine be done." So I suppose this is using Pluto to eliminate mental self-will and to correlate the consciousness with Shambhala, which is highly Plutonic. I think, all of these planets and signs do not just have one location or one area of application. It's quite a fluid thing, but we have to observe what DK is saying here about how to redeem the 3 aspects of the lower nature. And all of this is done correctly in time. Hercules coming first and focusing on passing tests on the physical plane. The Buddha coming next, focusing on passing tests on the astral plane. I think Taurus is much connected with the 2nd initiation, just as Scorpio is. And then the Christ coming third in order and carrying this onto the mental plane. Obviously, in all of these systems, the discipleship under any of these signs has to be successful on all 3 levels of the personality. Father, not my will, but thine be done. The tests carry the self-will of the personality up into the region of the divine will, and the result is inspiration and the emergence of a world savior. Well, this is very high indeed. Usually in the 5-fold steps of meditation, Sagittarius, which is the 5th, rules inspiration, but we can see how the inbreathing of spirit from Shambhala is a still higher form of inspiration and comes from the monadic level and the Pisces connection to Shambhala. We are aware that some human beings end their human experience in Pisces, very few, and then find relationship to Shambhala rather than to the hierarchy. Okay, so this has been well defined by the Tibetan. Scorpio is really active on all 3 levels, we had been told elsewhere, but here it represents physical plane tests. Taurus is, well, it's certainly a sign connected with the dense physical nature and its appetites, absolutely, but it does govern desire paramountly, and it can lead us into the light of illuminations. It's active on all 3 levels, of course, but here predominantly in relation to the Buddha, the reorientation of desire. As for Pisces, it's usually considered not much of a physical sign, certainly an emotional sign, but the higher aspects of Pisces under Pluto seem to do with the divine will, and the mind is the carrier of the will, so that is really something to remember, that Pisces is training the will as it affects the mental processes. Self-will has very much to do with what we make up our lower mind to do. But we can relinquish all this. We can put that to death under Pluto and acquiesce. That's the word connected with Pisces, acquiescence. Acquiesce to the divine will and become eventually a world savior. Well, really, both the Christ and Buddha were world saviors. I don't know if we can say that Hercules was on the path of the world saviors, but he was certainly a great server. He was, living millions of years ago, and we know very little about his life. Although he's still active in Shambhala, which tells us that he has chosen the path of Earth's service. So we are to ponder on the above and learn the lessons of appetite, of desire, and of self-will. This is so interesting. Appetite, in this case, is connecting with Scorpio. Desire is connecting with Taurus. And self-will is connecting, or it's overcoming at least, is connecting with Pisces. Of course, we know that Taurus is a sign of immense appetite, but in the designations here, Scorpio is in that position. And once our desires are de-glamorized, as they can be under the light of Taurus at the second initiation, we can truly begin to desire the good, the beautiful, and the true, rather than follow all our many glamorous desires. All right. The three tests in Scorpio also concern the three aspects of the human being as they fuse and blend upon the physical plane. So it's so interesting that appetite is here connected with Scorpio. It's such a Taurian descriptor, but of course the opposite signs have much in common. So they concern the three aspects of the human being as they fuse and blend upon the physical plane. Remember, Scorpio is a triple sign, so it does tell us something about the integration of the three aspects and the coming down to Earth, ruled by the M of matter. M is number 4, and we're talking about the dense physical level, with mind being number 1, desire being number 2, etheric nature number 3, and the dense physical matter being number 4. So the M gives us a hint about the close association with dense matter and the need to prove what one is to prove through that lower type of field. So first of all, we have the tests of appetite. Okay, I guess this is operative in the physical nature of Scorpio in general. This appetite is the natural predilections and tendencies which are inherent in the animal nature, and these are namely 3. So we're dealing with the natural man, his natural tendencies and predilections. It's built into the animal nature and must be overcome in Scorpio in the first level of testing in Scorpio. See, what we're going to learn here is that the 3 decanates are assigned to 3 different levels of the personality, but with Scorpio assigned mainly to the lowest level, the physical level. But now we're going to learn that in Scorpio, that energy can be applied to overcoming tests on all levels of the personality, including the astral and the mental as well. So sex and physical comfort, I guess there's also emotional comfort, right? Sex, physical comfort, and money as concretized energy are the first level of the physical tests. So I think, we see many people still struggling with these or with residuals of these, because they do, pave the way for pleasure upon the physical plane specifically. And if we are addicted to pleasure, we are treading the broad way rather than the straight and narrow way, which leads to salvation. The tests are, secondly, the tests connected with desire and the astral plane. So under Taurus, we may have the illumination of desire, but under Scorpio, we have to face the tests of the desire body, and these are subtler in nature, producing automatic effects upon the physical plane. That's true because according to our desires, our physical elemental will respond. So these more subtle astral tests are not inherent in the animal nature, but are imposed by the desire nature, and the body will so respond unless we overcome these effects. Now, so we have the three areas which must be overcome: fear, hatred, and ambition. And he also defines ambition as the desire for power, the love of power, fear, hatred, and ambition, or the desire for power. And I'll also underline these: sex, physical comfort, and money as concretized energy. And oftentimes people are fighting with a mixture of these. They may not have completely overcome the physical test before dealing with the emotional. There may be residuals and vestigials, things left over which still have to be conquered. Excuse me. Then there are, thirdly, the tests of the lower critical mind. Now, criticism, he says that great, it's the cause of, dire cause of misery. It creates misery, criticism does. So, we know that nobody can wield the word of death like the Scorpio individual, to say the most hurtful thing. So there is really a need to control one's speech and one's thought, because speech will surely result as a result of the kinds of thoughts we have been entertaining. So there are the tests now of the, imposed by the desire nature. Yeah, underline that. These are the tests of the lower critical mind. Not the tests of higher mind, although I suppose there are tests there as well which get in the way of the downflow of intuition. But we have here three factors resident in the mind which must be overcome: pride, separativeness, and cruelty. He says, remember that the worst kind of cruelty is not of a physical nature, but is of a more mental in character. Well, it seems that our divorce courts have recognized this, because there is one ground for divorce, which we call mental cruelty. I guess it, stunts the character and prevents any form of happiness. In fact, is a cause of great misery. Mental cruelty. Therefore, you have in the category of that which must be tested and proved to be non-existent. There's a very good, all of these residuals, all of these negative qualities must at length in the life of the Scorpio individual be proved to be non-existent. I'm remembering the Dalai Lama kind of taking stock of his own nature and kind of looking at certain certain faults and assessing whether he still was the victim of them. I remember him coming to the word hatred, and he thought for a minute and says, well, no, not much, hardly at all. He was being so objective about it, as one who was a scientist of his own nature, and you could feel that in fact he was released from that. Of course, DK has said that one of the last things to be overcome by the master is irritation. So I'm sure that working with co-workers, the Dalai Lama and his co-workers and other initiates and their co-workers find irritation a difficult and final fetter to relinquish. Okay, so these things have to be so overcome: sex, physical comfort, money, in the sense of the love of money, I suppose, and fear, hatred, and ambition, or the desire for power, and pride, separativeness, and cruelty, especially mental cruelty here. These have to be nullified so that they are cast out. They are no longer really a part of our life demonstration in our personality. So they must be tested and proved to be non-existent. Now, the following categories, which I am re-enumerating because of their basic importance. Okay. Well, DK, being a master teacher, does know how to repeat. So anyway, he's looking at how to consider these factors: sex, the relation of the pairs of opposites, nothing wrong in itself, a divine potency and most necessary for the continuation of the human race at its present stage. These can be selfishly utilized or divinely blended, perhaps under the influence of buddhi, where at the fourth initiation the sex relation is finally solved. So he's not advocating here some strict form of celibacy if one would be a student of spirituality. Hardly that. Then there's physical comfort. It involves life conditions selfishly appropriated, and we do see, that many people are under the Scorpio influence, what DK calls cornering the market, seeking to appropriate for themselves as much of the comforts of life and the means of attaining those comforts as may be possible. So they wish to live a luxurious life. He does tell us that the heights of luxury that we have now are as nothing compared to the stupendous luxury, the heights of luxury achieved in Atlantis. So maybe we have come some distance, that incredible type of indulgence, but you do see many people caring only for the plushness, the cushiness, the comfortableness of their own life conditions to shield them from the hard, difficult experiences that so many are forced to encounter. So it's it's basically grabbing for oneself all that is good and not caring about the others. And money, of course, is related to this, selfishly cornered, grabbing it all for oneself. The spider of Scorpio reaches out and with its many legs or arms grasps for itself that which can provide the more comfortable, pleasurable life. Cornering the market is a tendency to which a number of Scorpio individuals are given. The monster of selfishness, which DK quotes on page 333, the monster of selfishness is at work, grasping for itself alone. Sex, physical comfort, and money, nothing wrong with any of these, all of them needed in a way. I mean, we must be able to live on the physical plane in such a way that we do not always have to attend to the physical body so that we can get on with the expression of our higher principles. And money is the medium of exchange, and at the moment it can be the representative of the divine will. It can energize those thought forms, those patterns which need energizing, and it can help to circulate the vital principles so that all can live a healthy life. And of course, without the sex relation, there would be no propagation of the human race, which has hardly finished its method of development. Hardly. So the sacral center will be kept, DK says, in good functioning order until 2/3 of humanity is on the path, and then perhaps there will be some phasing out of its potency. Right now in the Aquarian age, ruled by Uranus, with Uranus ruling the sacral center, I think we will see quite an increase of its expression. All right. Now we move on here. He's reiterating these points. He's on the astral plane. Fear. He makes a sweeping statement. He says, fear, which conditions activity today. So he's telling us that so much of our human responsiveness is due to the fear factor. The fear factor is said to be the dweller on the threshold in general for our planet, and very much inherited from the moon. When we look to our moon in our horoscope, we will see where a number of fears prevail. Hate, so this is a Martian factor in a way. It is a factor in conditioning relationships. It's under the law of cleavage. It's under the first ray as well. It's repulsive. It tends towards separation, and it tends towards the repudiation of possible harmonization and accommodation. Hate is based on a lack of full understanding. It's certainly based on a lack of identification with the hated object. There's some impelling sense of separateness here in hate relationships. So, let's just say that the fourth ray and the second ray are meant to overcome these repulsive relationships which prevent the unification of our world. Our second ray soul on our planet is tending towards unification, and hate is holding apart the factors which are to be unified. The sixth ray has a lot of this as well, because if you do not adhere to the ideal of the sixth ray person, you are considered a threat, and man hates what he fears. So often this is the case. Then there is ambition, conditioning our objectives. We want things not so much for humanity, not so much for the planet. We want things for our illusory self. So we have the illusion of being number one, a separate and separative identity. We have a keen individualism, which is not linking in group with others, and we want that ego, which we perceive as real, to attain its objectives, even though they will be destructive of larger and better group and planetary objectives. Fear, hate, and ambition, or the desire for personal power. Power can be good as long as power is for the whole, power is for the group, power is for the enactment of the divine plan. But when we are under the illusion of being the separative ego, and we seek power for that illusion, then we inevitably will cause disruption and separation, and we will prevent the gathering unity from occurring. Then we go on to the mental sins, as it were, the mental mistakes. And let's see how we can do this. Yeah, these are the ones that the modern disciple is often facing in the most critical manner. They are the most difficult, I think. Let's just say that the devil, the so-called devil, is really focused on the mental level. We have pride. And this is, of course, based on ahamkara again. It's based on the misperception of identity. One thinks one is the isolated individual, and one seeks to gain power over others, largely not to be vulnerable, not to be compromised, ultimately not to be destroyed, and have the sense of identity disappear, the great fear of the annihilation of identity. So pride, which is intellectual satisfaction, quite happy with the way one does things, making the mind the barrier to soul control. You find all these reasons to support your own perceived superiority. So you refuse to identify with states which you consider inferior to the state which you are upholding. They're all forms of pride, and intellectual pride is perhaps one of the worst. Let's just say if the lower concrete mind is to become a sphere unto itself, a very dangerous thing. It happens for those who turn to the left-hand path. Intellectual satisfaction with their own mental state is at the cause of this separation of the lower mind from the higher energies which could possibly influence it for the better. When there is intellectual pride, intellectual satisfaction, you will not have a mind held steady in the light of the soul, a mind illumined by soul values. Then we have the separativeness, and this is the basis of what DK calls the one and only heresy, the great heresy of separativeness, which is the isolated attitude and which makes the mind the barrier to right group relations. So one again, as a lower ego, seems to be standing alone and feels that he is worthy to stand alone and is perhaps better than those which he has conceived of as other than himself. There is no desire to join with others because their ways are considered inferior. And we certainly see this in separative religion today, with various religions thinking they are the one and only religions, and all other methods are inferior and not even to be approached. They are simply to be repudiated or destroyed. So there's nothing is seen in common, and the fourth ray, which is very prominent in Scorpio, is not at work except in the struggle aspect, in terms of looking for things in common, which at which the fourth ray is very good. That quality of the fourth ray is not used. But when you can begin to see, let us say, that we all suffer, we all experience these things, we all pass through the common human experience, then the separativeness breaks down. One of the great ways of breaking it down is through the factor of pain. So the path of pain, which is the fourth path, is ideally calibrated to break down our inherent egoistic separativeness, especially when people have the hardline rays very strong. And then cruelty. I mean, each one of these could be meditated upon. I'm just giving my own impressions, and they are brief and not necessarily as deep as they could be. We could each take these particular sins of the mind into consideration and see the extent to which we suffer from them, because we do have to nullify them, we do have to negate them, and as DK says, prove them to be non-existent. Then there is cruelty, which is satisfaction with personality methods, and which makes the mind the instrument of the sense of power. So in other words, I'm just fine as I am, nothing needs to be changed, my methods are better than yours, and I would impose them upon you. So I will prove in some way that you are less than I am. I will, regardless of your structure, impose my structure upon you. I will disregard what is good for you and instead make you to perform that which is good for me, or which I have decided is good for me, that with which I am most satisfied. So I think we see how these three sins all play into each other, all support each other. In separativeness, there is pride, there is a cruel attitude, and cruelty, separativeness is implied, and so is pride. So in pride, we hold ourselves apart separatively, and we inevitably turn cruel because we look down upon others, and we seek to make sure that they do not rise to the level that we have conceived ourselves as occupying. So there, it's a triangle, it's a negative triangle in rotation. All of these negative factors supporting each other, and thus it will be with sex, physical comfort, and money. They will support each other. And so with fear and hatred and ambition, they will support each other. So on each level we have rotating triangles, and let us say that all of these negative factors are interpenetrating. All right. Well, we've gone on into our second hour. Into our third hour. I didn't realize that. But we can move ahead a bit. When these faults are realized, first you have to see them. So often they are unconscious, and it takes circumstance and others to point them out. When these faults are realized and are overcome, The result is twofold. The establishing of right relations with the soul, we're no longer blocking soul influence, and also with the environment. We're not getting that karmic backlash from the environment because we are harmless. Now, let's just say that all of the nine, all of the nine are methods of harmfulness, and we have to become harmless. So Scorpio, the monster of selfishness, can cause great harm. This we realize. At the same time, we are to use this energy of overcoming, this energy which produces victory. We are to use this energy to overcome these negativities, and not necessarily by the method of Mars, where we simply fight them to the death, because they tend to spring up twofold or threefold for every one that is vanquished, but rather by the method of illumination, by the intuitive realization and the dispelling of the great illusion. We dispel the Maya and the deception which are inherent in the serpent of matter, in the serpent of personality. And this we do through the illuminating power of Mercury. So if we are able at last to see the personality as it is from a higher or Buddhic perspective, we can destroy for once and for all, take away the life, the vitality of these 9 means of negativity and all of their many offshoots, as we could, list, hundreds of sins, let us say, and we could correlate with them with these 9. So these 2 results are the goal of all tests in Scorpio, and they are establishing of right relations through the 4th ray, the ray of harmony, and through the 2nd ray with the soul, and also with the environment. So through meditation and through humility, we allow in soul power, the higher power, and also we cease our egoistical conflict with our environment, in which we, the lower ego, seek to be a dominating, prideful, separative, cruel force, as if to somehow secure our position in the realm of being, unless we are all those things and fend off any possible attack by the environment. It is as if we are not. So when we come into a truer identity, we no longer have to be in an adversarial condition with our position, with our environment. So these 2 tests are the goal of all the tests. These 2 results are the goal of all the tests in Scorpio. So I'll make that a little bit bigger. Excuse me. And we have to establish right relations with the soul. This we do through our occult training and certainly through service, and also with the environment. Service is so very important. And when we cease our internal war with ourselves, perhaps we will as well cease our war with the environment. Okay, the keynotes of this sign are therefore, we discussed this, test, trial, and triumph. So let's just say that a trial may be more like a prolonged test. Much is in the balance during a trial, and we see through our own observation whether or not we have succeeded in overcoming the various tests presented to us. Our whole life can be like a trial to see if we can emerge victorious over at least one of the heads of the Hydra. Maybe more, however. I think the individual who experiences a life as a higher disciple in later Scorpio picks up all of the unpassed tests and resubmits himself perhaps to cumulatively to all of the 9 major tests before entering that point of tension which is equivalent to the 3rd degree. Finally, there is the emergence and let's just say there is a fearful conflict, DK calls it, before the third degree, and the truly triumphant disciple can enter that point of tension where he becomes the true initiate. That is his real triumph. Along the way, there is the physical and emotional triumph. They are partial triumphs. And finally, at the third degree, he triumphs physically, emotionally, and mentally, dispelling illusion, dissipating glamour, and dispersing Maya. So there are certain keynotes, things which are always true and always sounding in relation to the sign. And these keynotes can also be called struggle, strength, and Sagittarian attitudes, as we discussed before. First comes the struggle. On the basis of struggle, if we cannot struggle, we will not develop strength. So when the fourth ray comes in, it will help to develop steadfast strength. That's one of the keynotes of the fourth ray, steadfastness. And eventually we'll be able to be so stable and not contending with the right and the left and the up and the down that we can develop consolidated, focused, one-pointed Sagittarian attitudes. And that may be what emerges in the later part of the Scorpio experience. It's as if every sign in the later part of its expression looks forward to the gift of the succeeding sign. Another angle of the experience in Scorpio can be covered by two words: recapitulation and reorientation. Well, the factor of memory is involved here. We're not allowed to leave any stone unturned. We might say, the scorpion is hiding under the rock, so we need to go backward and to recapture many types of confrontations which may not have been entirely successful. We must not leave anything in the lower aura of which we are not aware. We cannot leave any poisonous serpents or scorpions or, things that represent poison to the integrity of our system. We have to go back over earlier semi-successes until they become complete successes, and then we are able really to reorient ourselves to our spiritual principles, and using Sagittarian attitudes, stay reoriented. In Scorpio, two most occult factors emerge from the past and begin to engross the attention of the disciple. Well, in other words, we're dealing with that which is gross, with that which is lower, that which memory reveals. So Pluto is the planet that dredges up experience from the past and will not let us overlook that. If we think about Sigmund Freud, whether we agree with the completeness of his method or whether we think other things are needed as well, he certainly was a highly scorpionic individual. He had Scorpio rising. His sun was in Taurus, dealing with the instinctual nature. I wonder if we can find his horoscope here. It'd be interesting to see. So F-R-E-U, Freud. There he is. And we can see, there's Scorpio rising, and Pluto also is found in Taurus. Much is found in the therapeutic 6th house, and he's dealing in general with 7th house issues of sex and relationship, and he's certainly an iconoclast. He has Uranus here conjunct the Sun, and he's certainly breaking up many old traditions and preconceptions and conveying thought through Gemini, but Scorpio is the main thing. And here he is very disruptive of the Victorian method of relating. The relationships were presumably based upon certain principles, and he's showing there are so many overlooked, unsuspected plutonic, scorpionic factors lurking in the psyche of man, which are really poisoning the relationships, and unless faced, will always produce a disintegrous type of behavior. So a memory emerges. One is memory, and the other, as a consequence of memory, is the dweller on the threshold. This is one of those signs in which we are faced with many things we would rather not recall. They become shocking to us, and we have to find a way to deal with them. We can even be overcome by the negativity of our memories and our forward progress stopped because we feel so appalled at what we may have committed, not only in this life, but in many lives into which memory might extend. Memory, in the sense here involved, is not just a faculty of mind, like we memorize this or that. It is a recall of past experience, as is so often supposed, but it's essentially a creative power. Now, this is interesting. Essentially a creative power. It is basically an aspect of thought, and coupled with imagination is a creative agent, because thoughts are things. Well, when these memories come into our mind, they can definitely influence the patterns of our thought and the patterns of our behavior. Also, I suppose the artist can draw creatively upon that which is stored in the memory. So when memories resurface, they have a power to compel the life, to create forms which the life process follows. So we have to be in good control of the negative ones, and I suppose there are suppressed positive memories as well. From ancient recesses of memory, I suppose hidden away, recesses, crevices, things overlooked, not suspected, far from the focus of the normal consciousness, normally focused on what we call the middle of consciousness, the middle consciousness, and not in the unconsciousness, from ancient recesses of memory, from a deeply rooted past, which is definitely recalled in Scorpio and overlooked by many who don't have Scorpio or Pluto strong, and from the racial and individual subconscious, as we can, as Jung says, recall that which was not necessarily personal experience at all, but which was racially based, or founded and established thought reservoirs and desires inherited from ourselves, presumably, and inherent in our nature. This is so well expressed, isn't it? It really gives depth psychology its reason for being. We think about Freud and Jung as the preeminent depth psychologists, those who have given their name to that. And it is the deep recollection of the distant past which is found to be influential and thus creative in our modern behavior, in our present behavior. From ancient recesses of the memory, from a deeply rooted past which is definitely recalled, and from the racial and the individual subconscious, or founded and established thought reservoirs and desires, inherited and inherent and long forgotten, there emerges from individual past lives and experience. Okay, let's see what's emerging here. Okay, there emerges from individual past lives and experience that which is the sum total of all instinctual tendencies. Well, I'm having a little trouble here. I think the computer is a little overloaded. The sum total of all instinctual tendencies, of all inherited glamours, and of all phases of wrong mental attitudes. Okay. Pausing while the computer goes through its thing. That pale look is not especially welcome, because it can mean we are just about to crash, which I hope is not the case. Hope that is not the case. So, right. Okay. It's going through it's going through a recapitulatory cycle here. And I can only hope that before long it settles down. I'll have to not overload it with too much information. Let's see if, all right. Let's just see if this will keep on doing this or whether it is possible to, no, perhaps it is. Okay. There emerges from individual past lives and experience that which is the sum total of all instinctual tendencies. That's the physical level, which he has correlated with Scorpio and with Hercules, of all inherited glamours, and that's the astral level, and all phases of wrong mental desires. We have wrong desires and wrong mental attitudes. So these things come into the consciousness of the strongly scorpionic individual, or let us say the strongly plutonic individual, or the individual, let's say, born in water signs where the Scorpio decanate is somehow emphasized. To these, as they constitute a blended whole, we give the name a dweller on the threshold. You know, the great phantasm about which so much has been written, sort of our collective unredeemed past, the unredeemed sins of the past, which face us and provide a definite obstacle as we seek to enter the realm of initiation. This dweller is the sum total of all the personality characteristics which have remained unconquered and unsubdued, and which must be finally overcome before initiation can be taken. So it is a wholeness, isn't it? It's not just instinctuality or glamour or illusion. It's all of that combined into some great obstructive figure or source or even entity which we have to confront and overcome before true initiation can be taken. Probably we overcome an aspect of the dweller with each initiation, but the final, there's a major dweller confrontation before the third initiation, and before the fourth we are dealing with an aspect of humanity's dweller, to which I suppose our dweller has been resonant. But the unconquered, okay, each life sees some progress made, especially, I suppose, each scorpionic life, some personality defects straightened out, and some real advance effected. Evolution is slow. Indeed, it is slow. And we would like to hasten it, and things are hastening at this time. New opportunities exist for us, but we've been through this for thousands of lives, and over millions of years. So we got ourselves into a big mess through unwise decisions and just through basic ignorance and through willful rebellion against the law. And now comes the disentanglement for many and for humanity as a whole. Excuse me. But the unconquered residue and the ancient liabilities are numerous. Probably if we could see what they are, we would be appalled, which is why only so much of memory is released into our present consciousness. For a man to remember all of his past lives and experiences suddenly, I think it would be an overwhelming experience, so we have to build up the strength to face this unconquered residue a bit at a time. Of course, there do come great revelations and even purgings where much of it is dealt with at once on any of the three levels of the personality. I'm reminded of T. Subarro, who was considered to be the spiritual equal of HPB, and he asked his master to precipitate all of his karma at once. I guess the master complied, and he got a terrible disease of a cancerous nature, Hodgkin's disease, I think, from which he died. But it was a drastic purging on the physical level. I guess there are similar kinds of purgings possible on emotional and mental levels, but probably the incremental approach is safer for most souls, although maybe the very vigorous first-ray souls, say, put it on the table all at once. Okay, but the unconquered residue and the ancient liabilities are numerous and excessively potent. And when soul contact is adequately established, because you do need that balancing factor of the soul if you're going to face this stuff, there eventuates a life wherein the highly developed and powerful personality becomes in itself the dweller on the threshold. And so usually we do not consider our entire personality nature to be that obstruction. But at a high stage of development, we see the entire third aspect of divinity and all that it has achieved within the lower worlds and in its own right as an individual as the dweller, not just the negative parts, but even the positive parts. Then, see, all of this harkens back to the Glamour book where he tells us how to deal with the dweller, when it appears, how all the different initiations are involved in dealing with dweller phenomena. So this is harkening back to that particular book. Then the angel of the presence, which is the solar angel itself, I suppose, and the dweller stand face to face. And something, the suspense of it all here, and something must then be done. And something, so that is a standoff, that is a showdown, that is a kind of high noon, that's a face-off, that's a crisis. Something must be done because the disciple is in a way in the middle. We have here the Kurukshetra experience. We have the experience of Arjuna. He is in a way invested in both of these opponents. He can identify with either one. He's going to have to throw his power of identification towards the angel of the presence and not towards the dweller. Eventually the light of the personal self, i.e. dweller, fades out and wanes in the blaze of glory which emanates from the angels. So in a way, then the personality ray becomes truly a sub-ray, of the soul ray, and the personality becomes merely an instrument that can be wielded by the angel or by the man identified as the soul on the higher mental plane. And then the battle is over, and the right force, the hierarchically superior force, has won and has not actually repudiated the dweller or the complete personal self, but has in fact subsumed it, has in fact used it, redeemed it really. Then the greater glory obliterates the lesser, the greater light obliterates the lesser light. In that light I shall see light. And then both of these factors can be used and put at the disposal of the spirit itself. This is, however, only possible when the personality eagerly enters into this relation with the angel. This is soul identification. This is the purpose of all our occult meditation. We are increasingly identifying with the ego on the higher mental plane, or that part of the angel which substands our causal structure. We find a new focus or locus, so we find a new place, a new elevation at which to recognize our identity. We become the soul, not just the soul in incarnation. We realize ourselves as the soul. This is, however, only possible when the personality eagerly, not reticently, reluctantly, with feet dragging, eagerly enters into this relation with the angel, recognizes itself also, I would say, as the dweller, and as a disciple begins the battle between the pairs of opposites and enters into the tests of Scorpio. So this is the predecessory action which has to occur. If the greater blaze which emanates from the angel is to obliterate the lesser light, we have to be willing to engage in the great battle between the pairs of opposites. So we identify as the angel, we recognize ourselves as well as the dweller, we stand in the center as a disciple, and we allow the battle between the pairs of opposites to occur. At the same time, we realize that it's not just through might and main and brute force and Martian methods that the battle is won, but the battle is won in consciousness and through the power of, at first, the light of the soul, and later through the power of the intuition. Finally, the battle which leads to the attainment of the third degree is won through the application of the intuition and the realization of the personality nature as an aspect of the great illusion. We see through the illusion of the personality. These tests and trials are ever self-initiated. They are not forced upon us, and it's only when we decide to really do something about our realized crisis and difficult situation that the battle is on and a positive outcome can be expected. The disciple puts himself into the positive or conditioning environment wherein the trials and the discipline are unavoidable and inevitable. In other words, what we're saying here is the disciple does not run away but stands his ground and says, I'm on the battleground, I will not leave the battleground, I will see this battle through to its conclusion, even if it is a fight to the death. Now, I'm sure that all of us have undergone some mode of this process, maybe not the final process, but we've been born in Scorpio, we've had Scorpio prominent, we've been born under Scorpio, and inevitably we will face these great temptations which have to be overcome. So when the mind has reached a relatively high stage of development, as it can, in this quite mental sign of Scorpio, with Mercury so strong, the memory aspect is evoked in a new conscious manner. And then everything latent, and then every latent predisposition, every racial and national instinct, every unconquered situation, and every controlling fault rises to the surface of consciousness. In other words, you might say we enter therapy. We say, okay, I want to experience depth psychology. I remember in my own life that when I had Pluto transiting opposed the Sun, I went into depth psychology and Jungian training. And I kept a dream log, and I think the tape recorders of those days were clunky affairs, but I slept with the microphone in my hand, so that when I would wake up, I would mutter a few things about the dream into the microphone, and then I'd turn it off and wait for the next one. It wasn't very restful, but I certainly had found a lot of nice Plutonic material that I had not recognized before to deal with. And I did this purposefully. And I saw that indeed what DK says is true, that, things you could never think about yourself as really existing come to the surface because all those crevices and recesses had the light thrown upon them by your own deliberate, willful entry into those areas. So every latent predisposition, every racial and national instinct, every unconquered situation, and every controlling fault, interesting way of looking at it, we have faults, do they control us or not? Every controlling fault rises via Pluto to the surface of the consciousness. And then the fight is on. Okay, so what do you do when that fight is on? You really do need the skill in action. The keynote of Scorpio is, however, triumph, and this is something I personally often forget. I I know all about the struggles, having Pluto rising in my chart, and I know that it's unavoidable, and I usually try to avoid doing things on Scorpio days and all the rest, forgetting that the outcome really is triumph. This is its major expression upon the physical plane particularly, and we saw how much DK connected Scorpio to bringing all difficulties down onto the physical plane, where there would be, in fact, an important fight where you would prove on the physical plane and in the physical plane that you had overcome these obstructions and controlling faults. As a result of struggle and of victory, the whole divine man, not yet perfectly expressing himself, if I might word the situation thus, because after all, we're not necessarily the master of wisdom here, we're just the struggling disciple, is anchored upon the physical plane with such accuracy and clarity that there is no escape from the environing conclusions of the disciple's family, friends, and group that he is a disciple. Well, oftentimes it is the disciple's family that attempts to prove to the disciple that he is not what he claims to be. DK discusses this elsewhere, but let's just say that right here on the physical environment, in the physical environment, the condition of the disciple declares itself. He is either winning or is losing, and everybody is seeing what he is doing right on the physical plane. So this is a very important factor, bringing it onto the physical plane for a decisive battle. Now, there are many internal scorpionic battles, I think, in the mind, in the emotions, but finally the whole thing is made manifest, and the person has to win the battle on the physical plane just the way the true initiate has to demonstrate his initiation in the physical brain in most cases. Sometimes there are interplane initiations, but in the great majority of cases you need a physical incarnation in which to prove initiation in yourself. So the keynote of Scorpio is triumph. This is its major expression upon the physical plane. As the result of struggle and of victory, the whole divine man, that means the soul in incarnation as well, not yet perfectly expressing himself, if I might word the situation thus, is anchored upon the physical plane with such accuracy. Our inner resources are right here and now to deal with a difficult situation right here and now with such accuracy and clarity that there is no escape from the judgment, from the environing conclusions of the disciple's family, friends, and group that he is a disciple. In other words, he proves himself to be a disciple if all goes well. Let's say he proves his discipleship if all goes well, or proves his failure and suffers the repudiation of his family, friends, and group, as often happens as well. Then you try again. You get up and you try again. The story of Robert Bruce and the spider, an old kind of story from medieval days of the Scottish chieftain Robert Bruce retreating, beaten in battle, hiding away, and wondering about his future, to see a spider try to climb the thread many times. Maybe it was 13 times. I forget however many it was, but failing almost every time until the last time, maybe the 13th time, he succeeded, from which Robert Bruce is said to have gained new courage, understanding how one must try and try again, one must persist in order to achieve. So the life on the physical plane, anchored with accuracy and clarity, and you're cornered now. There's no escape. The judgment will be there, either a positive recognition or a recognition of a failure, and there will be, for the moment, a decision with regard to the disciple, and the disciple will also decide with respect to himself. He will see whether or not he is the true disciple. From that angle, he is meticulously watched. Yes, he is meticulously watched because, after all, he may serve as an example to others, an inspiring example. Or the dweller in other people may watch him to prove that he could not accomplish. Whoopsie. Okay. Let's see. It seems that we are still broadcasting. I hope that is the case. It seems to be the case, but it tells me that my audio connection has been lost. I will go on because I seem to have the microphone set up, and now that has disappeared. I hope that over the past couple of seconds there was not that. Yeah, I hope that it did not disappear. Anyway, I will go on hoping that this will be taken properly. So he is meticulously watched, and as I was saying, the dweller in other people may watch him as well, because they do not want to have to do what he is doing. Their dweller nature does not want to have to make the efforts he is making, so they would be very happy from their dweller perspective. Okay, they would be. It says to start the broadcast. Okay, let's try it.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I am hoping here. Excuse me, I have to do something over here. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm hoping that this is continuing. We had a little bit of a glitch there. I'm holding this webinar by myself with another computer, so there can be failures. And here I am talking about how the dweller in other people does not like to acknowledge success in a fellow disciple. This would be a problem. So from that angle, it says he is meticulously watched. He learns the meaning of the word example. We are told that we must set a good example. That's one of the 4 requirements in the White Magic book. We are to obey the inner impulses of the soul. We are to inquire the way, to obey the inner impulses of the soul. We are to follow the path of the soul, even if the best and wisest in the world say that it's foolish. And number 4, we are to set an example. So he is pilloried. He is pilloried by those who are onlookers. And the first conscious stages towards group awareness and group response plus group service are now taken, because the group I is focused on the disciple to see what he will do. And this has an effect for better or for worse, according to the quality of his attainment. Such is the outcome and reward of the experience in Scorpio. It is leading towards group consciousness, interestingly. So he is meticulously watched. He learns the meaning of the word example because he is anchored with accuracy, inescapably upon the physical plane. He's anchored with accuracy and clarity. His whole nature is anchored upon the physical plane, and his struggle is visible. And so he either sets an example, or he fails in that example. And I'm sure we have all failed many times. The bitterness, the woe of failure, I think, is acutely felt in the fourth ray sign, Scorpio. The pain of victory, the agony of defeat, these held him down, as it is said in the fourth ray stanza. It is in this sign that the prodigal son comes to himself, and having eaten of the husks of life, and then experienced the bitterness of having done that, having exhausted the resources of worldly desire and ambition, seeing that all is worthless in these lower worlds, relatively speaking, except from the perspective of service, he says, I will arise and go to my Father. And there are two such major crises in the life of the aspirant. Okay, so the idea of reversal, of reversing the wheel, of heading finally towards the monad and towards Shambhala is undertaken in Scorpio. I will arise and go to my Father. Okay. So there are two such major crises in the life of the aspirant. Okay. The first, when the intelligent man of the world comes to himself and then reorients himself to the soul and its requirements. This leads to the tests in Scorpio. Okay, so he is a personality. He comes into the realization of his nature as a soul and incarnation, and then he reorients himself. Remember, this is a sign of reorientation and reversal involving Uranus. He reorients himself to the soul and its requirements, and then he allows himself to be tested. So this is one of those circumstances in which he arises and goes in a new direction. In this respect, it really makes sense that the partial rulership of the fifth petal, in which this kind of thing happens, is ruled by Scorpio when we begin to move clockwise in counting, in assigning the petals to the zodiacal signs, beginning with Pisces, then the fifth petal becomes Scorpio. Then he reverses his method. Now, there is another type of arising. So let us call this a lesser arising. Now we have another type of arising when the initiate of the third degree, upon a higher turn of the spiral, reorients himself to the monad and passes through most subtle tests to certain undefinable and spiritual recognitions. And upon these we need not enlarge, because I suppose these are recognitions leading to the fourth degree, which is ruled by the fourth ray, which makes me think that Scorpio, being the major fourth ray sign, would be involved in this fourth degree. And perhaps if one is on one's way to the Father, one can even go to the fifth degree and even to the sixth. So determining what are the signs of these high souls who need not be reborn, they most definitely do have certain signs most associated with them. For instance, we are told of the signs of the Buddha, I think largely Taurus and probably Pisces, and Master K.H. Signs are given for him as well, and these are initiates of the fifth and sixth, of the sixth degree and seventh degree. They have signs associated with their nature, but they are not signs that are taken from being born in the lower three worlds, unless they are continued in a higher way from having been born in the lower three worlds. We are told that the body, the Maya Varupa of a master, is often constructed on the body in which the fifth initiation was taken. So there could be some extension of the signs which were prevalent in that particular birth or life experience. Anyway, we don't know, but suffice it to say, the Christ is deeply associated with Pisces, and probably as the Prince of Peace, he would be associated with Libra as well. So these signs do follow a master or a Chohan, a high initiate. They remain with him for a long time. Probably, there is a horoscope of our planet in which the great signs of the zodiac working on a higher turn of the spiral are operative in the life of the Logos. Okay, now let us move forward. There is little for me to add here in connection with the fact that Scorpio is one of the four arms of the fixed cross. We remember how it went. We had Sirius, the fixed cross, then we had Scorpio, then we had Mars and Saturn, and we had hierarchy. There is little for me to add here in connection with the fact that Scorpio is upon one of the four arms of the fixed cross. I wonder if it's the most important arm as far as humanity is concerned. I think it is, because the entire group of human monads is ruled by Scorpio and its hierarchical ruler, Mercury. In the study of previous signs, much anent the fixed cross has already been covered, and there is no need for me to repeat the information here. I'm trying to remember exactly where this may have occurred. I think perhaps around page 143. Yes, there it is. So there, on 143, the discussion of the fixed cross for the man upon the reversing wheel is present: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and in Aquarius. So in Scorpio, in this sign, the disciple undergoes those tests which will enable him to take the second initiation, not just, but particularly, and demonstrate that the desire nature is subdued and conquered, and that the lower nature is, by being lifted up into the air, i.e. into heaven, towards the higher mental plane or even the Buddhic plane, that lower nature is capable of reaching the goal for this world period, and that from the earthly foundations of Scorpio, again indicating the physical plane, the personality can be so tested that it shows fitness for the world service demanded in Aquarius. The strength demonstrated in Scorpio has to be, is demanded in Aquarius, has to be expressed in Aquarius. This is beautifully expressed for us in the legend of Hercules, the sun god, who overcomes the nine-headed hydra, or serpent of desire, I guess on all three levels of the personality, by being forced to his knees, and from that position of humility lifts up the serpent into the air, and then deliverance comes. I guess we have an example of esoteric or occult weightlifting going on there, because what can be heavier than the weight of our accumulated unredeemed energy patterns and force patterns? Okay, so there's little for me to add here in connection with the fact that Scorpio is upon one of the forearms of the fixed cross. In the study of previous signs, much anent the fixed cross has already been covered, and there is no need for me to repeat it. So go to page 143, if you want to have more about that. Desire in Taurus becomes spiritual aspiration in Scorpio. Well, this is true, but remember that he says the highest form of aspirational idealism is found in Taurus. Isn't that interesting? So spiritual aspiration occurs in Scorpio, but also the highest form of aspirational idealism is found in Taurus. And just in case you don't believe me, I'll try to find it. There is one factor. There it is. Desire in its lowest expression is linked with the form in Taurus. Aspirational idealism in its highest possible expression is also achieved in Taurus. This is page 391 of Esoteric Astrology. Okay. Hopefully I will not be sent into this spiral again. Kind of looks like it. I think the whole computer is going to need a little bit of cleaning up before I get into this again. All right. The darkness of the experience in Scorpio becomes illumination in Taurus. And yet, interestingly, in the 5 phases of meditation, the Scorpio phase is called illumination. So this is one of those examples in which, in the opposing signs, similar types of results can be achieved. The darkness of the experience in Scorpio becomes illumination in Taurus, for it must never be forgotten that where the pairs of opposites are concerned, they gain and profit from each other. Yes, they interplay with each other, and oftentimes, although demonstrating opposite characteristics, are synthesized to produce similar results. All things must meet at the center. All opposition lines must come to the center, and in doing so, they demonstrate their similarity. For there is a direct line of force or contact between the two. This is a fact which is seldom recognized because we are operating too far down on the pyramid. We don't realize that as we ascend, the opposites will come together and demonstrate a victory which could not be had without the participation of both. They both participate in a type of elevated expression. So we oftentimes study the signs of the zodiac in opposites. We have a session on Aries Libra, a session on Taurus Scorpio, and Gemini Sag, and so forth. Okay. Now, we are at a point where I do think, given the fact that we've had a little bit of difficulty with the webinar, we can say that this is an end of EAA, Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 76, point A, B, and C. And we went from page 200, I believe, and we'll see where we are now, to 210. I believe that is true. I hope that is true. I don't want to go back to take a look. But what I do want to do is to have us do the great invocation. No, that's 78. It should be 76. I want us to do the great invocation together. I like to end each program with a great invocation, but when, as in this case, it looks like it's going to be a 3-hour program, we can end with it after the 3 hours. Okay. This being the great mantra of power and light and the method by which we are able to prepare best for the reappearance of the Christ. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And so we are letting off at this point in the Scorpio chapter, and around page 210, and we will continue with our next. It's a rather long chapter, so we will continue with our next webinar as webinar Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 77, assuming that the computer cooperates here. Hopefully it will. So we will see you, everybody. And there's all kinds of light and demonstrations going on here, but we will do our best to stabilize here, and we'll be back to you as soon as we can. All the best.